Hey Kendrick, it's 1995. I made you a sample. The 90s gave us songs like this and this and this. Let's make something that would sit right alongside them. So I was listening to GNX, and when I heard the Heart Part 6, the real Heart Part 6, I knew that I was going to have to make something, and I wanted to be as authentic as I could, but maybe borrow a couple of little things from other eras. You'll see that the snare sound that I use is maybe a little more 80s, but the chord movement and some of the sounds, especially for the keys and the little horn line, are very fitting with what would have been used in the 90s and the guitar part. Again, I took inspiration from the original sample for The Heart comes from, and that is Use Your Heart by SWV, which was released in 1996. So I actually went on Splice and I grabbed this little drum top loop to get some inspiration. Nothing too crazy, but I knew that I wanted a little bit more flavor, a little bit more swing. Now, if you don't know what swing is, instead of it being like ta 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 ta, it's more ta 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 ta. Don't know if that makes much sense to you, but it just like relaxes the whole groove in Logic. And I went to quantize it to this setting, 16 swing C setting, and that turned this to this. You hear it's more tak 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 tak, that kind of sound now. For me, and I don't always start with a perc loop or some drums, but immediately ideas started pouring into my brain as to how I was going to set this whole groove up, the rest of the drums, and then play some chords on top of this. So I added some kicks in, and I didn't get to this pattern straight away, but to help me get inspired as to what I was going to play, I dropped some kicks on just the ones, so on bar 2, on bar 4, maybe a couple of these other doubles here, and I added a snare drum, and which was this Lin drum sound here, big snare sound that probably more Prince, more 80s than 90s, but it definitely was used in the 90s as well. Once the drums are banging, you know that whatever you put over the top is going to work, as long as it's kind of musical. When I heard The Heart, immediately I thought of Lady in My Life by Michael Jackson, the intro part, which was then sampled and used in Hey Lover by LL Cool J. Go check out that record if you don't know it. We have a really, really cool chord movement that's not really that typical. You can see this progression as being in C major. Now I put Sound Shifter on the master, as I usually do, just to change it to make it a little bit more lo-fi, and I raised the whole sample by a semitone. Therefore it went from C major or A minor. A minor is the relative minor of C major, just all the white keys. It went up to C sharp major, but my first chord was actually an A major 9 or A major 7th chord. You're thinking, A major 7th is not in C major. How are you getting that chord? I'm really thinking of these first two chords as a 5-1 progression, with the second chord, a D minor, but I played a D minor 7 or D minor 9. That's our target chord. And the 5 of that chord is an A rooted chord. And I just used this A major 9 because I actually just borrowed the technique from Rod Temperton, who probably was not the first to do it, but the Lady in My Life chords are just so beautiful that I thought I'll take this. And when I heard it again, the same progression in the Kendrick track and in the SWV tune from the 90s, I was like, yeah, I'm having that. Progressions are not copyrighted. You have a similar feeling to those tracks, but again, it'll be different enough. Drums and those keys that I put in. You'll you'll hear these doo-da, these little notes here. I'm creating a melody again, as I always say, like try and be melodic with your parts. And these keys were just in Omnisphere, and I used a patch that I know was used extensively in the 90s, the MKS20 keyboard, which is legendary keyboard and module, nostalgic sound to it. To enhance it, I just EQ'd out a little bit there, a little bit of verb on that, decapitator for a tiny bit of distortion and a grit, and this lovely Dimension D chorus unit where I just put in 3 and 4, left it as it was, then balanced it off and panned it to the left. So guys, go follow me on Instagram. My handle is right here, BSticks Production, and go cop my free new mini kit. You got bass midis in there, you got stems, and hit me up. I would love to hear what you have been working on. I did a choir in next, and this choir, I just copied the MIDI, maybe moved a couple of voices around a little bit just to give a little bit of variation and a little bit of interplay between the two sounds. In these 90s records, you're going to hear a ton of horns, and I just use MIDI horns, like they work fine for this kind of thing. I mean, people were using the MKS keyboard, they were using tritons, they were using Korg Trinities, all kinds of synths like this JV1080s. So you would have heard basic MIDI horns on a lot of records back then, and they work pretty well to serve a purpose, just, you know, quite low in the mix. I varied up the rhythm on these because I wanted something short and stabby with maybe a couple of longer notes. As I developed the whole song, you'll see some longer notes in my horn line here, and then a couple of single lines where I'm just kind of walking down. I keep things natural here. It just has your head bumping when you play that, and that's a great sign. That's what you want. I recorded my guitar, and I just outlined these chords with little shell chords on the top 3 strings of the guitar. If you need guitar parts, hit me up, guys. And a guitar pack will be coming soon. Or if you even need help with your guitar lines, just shoot me a little message on my Instagram, BSticks Production, and I will give you some advice there. It's a bit out of tune, let's just say that. And I use Melodyne to help me out and just tune it up. It was going to serve 2 purposes. It was going to add to the percussive elements of the track by just being a chaka chaka. If you listen to Kendrick's The Heart Part 6, the guitar's quite high in the mix, and it's in a similar register to where I played, and it's doing these kind of picky percussive rhythms. But again, you've got to be careful. You don't want to get in the way of like a rapper's flow or anything like that, because again, Kendrick is a master. So I'm sure whatever you gave him, he'd be able to flow over, but just be mindful. Played another guitar in where I did some complementary little passages, and I panned that to the right. Added some little key drops here, which are those beautiful little sprinkles you hear all over old records like this. And that's just, again, on the sphere, same MKS20 sound there. Added a bit of wow control, wanted this to just drift a little bit. And these just sprinkle in and out. On the end of the phrases, I added a little lead synth just in the ESM, a very basic sound. It just marks the end of phrases. Went for a little lead vocal. Again, it's just arcade. My favorite element of this whole sample, which really kind of lands it in that West Coast thing, bass. And this bass is like straight out of the Mini Moog, which is classic West Coast, just used in so many West Coast records, DJ Quick and massive Snoop records. Dre loved this sound. I went for this bass sound in the Mini Monster, and I multed this sound out. So I took one sound for my higher register and then a sub sound that I use in Serum, where I just put this sine wave 2 octaves down, the drums and the bass for you, so you can hear that interplay. Quite a syncopated bass part, again, just quantized to the 16C, and you can do this kind of quantization in FL as well. And you just see that these notes are not exactly on the grid. Some of these notes here are a little bit pushed, and that just gives you that little lazy feel to the whole thing. And everything together My idea is that I want to keep it simple, but also have enough interest in there. When one thing plays, something else doesn't play. And it's all about that taste, that call and response, that not being too busy, leaving space. You want to make enough parts that are just playing at different times. Just keep it elevated, keep it sound like if someone hears this, they're like, shit, is this really from the 90s or is this something new that someone just put together? Guys, if you've got something out of this and you want some more similar sauce, go check out the video in the top corner right now.